Your kid sent you one line that explained your whole career back to you. And the worst part, he was right. 20 years of being the man with the answers, undone by a text he typed with his thumb while doing something else. And now he's 300 miles from home drafting a reply he'll never send, because he doesn't know who he is, if he's not the man who knows things. Watch the screen. Watch the little typing bubble rise and die. Rise and die. 4 times now. He's not composing a message, he's composing a self, and the draft keeps coming back corrupted. You know that feeling. When someone you taught suddenly knows more than you, and instead of pride, something cold drops in your stomach, and you hate yourself for it. Here's the shadow standing in that hotel room with him. It's not the correction. People get corrected every day. Bottom line, it's data, you patch it, you move on. No. The shadow is the silence after the correction. The exact moment a father realizes Michael stopped asking him things and quietly started telling him things instead. There was no announcement, no meeting. Nobody scheduled the handoff. The torch just changed hands while he was checking email, and the kid didn't even notice he was holding it. That's the part he can't patch. So here's the official story, the one he'd give if you asked him in the hotel lobby tomorrow over bad coffee. I'm proud of how sharp he is. He gets it from me. Clean, tidy, closes the ticket. Say it out loud and you'd believe him. The dry half smile, the analyst's nod, the man who has clearly run the numbers and is satisfied with the output. That's the mask, the armor, the face he wears so well he started wearing it when nobody's in the room. And the math underneath is genuinely beautiful, in a sick way. Watch how he engineers it. If Michael fails, well, the kid needed his father's guidance after all. ROI confirmed. But if his son wins, if the kid laps his old man entirely, that's a return on investment too. Proof the father built well. An A/B test where every result comes back a win. He never has to read the actual number on the screen, because the actual number says, you are no longer required. Not gonna lie, that's the elegant trick of a man who spent 2 decades making problems disappear. He's made himself disappear into the win column, where it's safe, where the loss can't reach him. And right now, at 9:08 p.m., he's already half checked out, eyes going flat and glassy at the wall, running tomorrow's status report in his head. Bullet points, owners, next steps. Not because anyone's waiting on it, but because drafting it makes him feel, for 90 seconds, like a man who is still ahead of something. That's the symptom. The way it shows up in the house, every house, maybe yours. The dad who can't sit at the dinner table without just checking one thing. Who answers the after-hours email at the kid's recital. Who'd rather be competent in a room 3 states away than uncertain in a room down the hall. It looks like ambition. It is not ambition. It's a man who confused being needed with being loved, and then built his entire fatherhood on the first one, because the first one came with metrics. You could measure it. You knew where you stood. Love, you can't put on a dashboard. So when the need expires, and it always expires, that's the whole point of raising them right, he doesn't feel the grief underneath. He feels the layoff. A quiet, unappealable layoff from the only job that ever made him a father. And he's furious. Furious in that low, flat, swallowed way at his own kid for doing the exact thing he raised him to do. So how does a man end up here, slumped on the edge of a hotel mattress at 48, treating a text from his own son like a server going down at 2 a.m.? It didn't happen overnight. Nobody installs this in a day. It compiles slowly, over 20 years of one quiet decision repeated until it hardens into a spine. Here's the decision. Somewhere back there, young and sharp and scared, he figured out that the world rewards you for knowing. Not for being kind, not for being present, for knowing. The guy with the answer gets the promotion, the respect, the seat at the head of the table. So he built himself into that guy, brick by brick, answer by answer, until the one who knows wasn't something he did, it was the only thing he was. And a man made entirely of answers has exactly one terror: the day the questions stop. Because if nobody needs your answers, what's left? You don't have a hobby, you have expertise. You don't have a self, you have a function. And a function that nothing is calling anymore is just dead code sitting on a server, taking up space, waiting to be deleted in the next cleanup. That's why he reaches for the work. Watch him do it right now, laptop open, 9 p.m., getting ahead on Q4 projections in a room that smells like industrial carpet and other men's regret. He's not behind. There's no deadline. He's reaching for the office because the office is the last building on Earth where his expertise still generates a status update, where someone still routes a question through him. At home, the routing table quietly rewrote itself. The kids stopped pinging. The wife stopped pinging years before that. But the office still acknowledges receipt. And here's where it stops being about him. Here's the part that should make you shift in your seat. You do this too. You bury yourself in the one room where you still feel competent. The job, the gym, the side project, the thing you're good at. Precisely because the people who love you have started building lives that don't run through you anymore. And instead of walking down the hall and saying, "I miss being part of your life," you open the laptop, you answer the email, you get ahead on the projections of a future nobody asked you to forecast. Because being needed could be measured. And love just asks you to show up with empty hands and no expertise and sit in the not knowing. He cannot sit in the not knowing. He has never once in his life sat in the not knowing. So he engineers the misery on purpose. He chooses the cold competence over the warm uncertainty every single time and calls it ambition. And then lies awake furious that his kids did the one thing he raised them to do. They left the table he was too busy working to sit at. So now he runs the simulation. Of course he does. That's what he does. He models the outcomes before he commits a single line to production. And right now there are 2 builds on the table, 2 versions of the next 10 minutes. And he's pricing both of them out like a man who's never once shipped the brave one. He stares at the cursor, the little vertical line blinking on, off, on, off. The same rhythm as that typing bubble, the same rhythm as the HVAC kicking on under the window. He fixes on it the way a drowning man fixes on a single point of light. Because if he keeps watching the cursor, he doesn't have to watch the choice. Build 1, the spoken truth. He picks up the phone, not to text, to call, and when the kid answers, he says the unthinkable. "You were right. I didn't know that. Tell me more. I miss talking to you." Run the ROI on that. The IF. He dials, and he says the true thing out loud. The PRO. For the first time in years, his son sees a father in the room instead of a fading subject matter expert. The relationship outlives the job. The torch gets passed with a ceremony, a real one, 2 grown men acknowledging the handoff instead of pretending it never happened. That's the return. That's the only return that ever actually mattered, and some flat, dead part of him knows it. And then, the con. And God, look at the price tag on this one. To make that call, he has to walk up to his own kid with completely empty hands. No expertise, no status update, no answer to trade. He has to say the one sentence a man like him would rather die in a hotel room than say, "I'm scared of being useless to you." That's surgery without anesthesia. That's standing in front of the person you raised and admitting the floor fell out from under your whole identity. And then, waiting. Waiting in that long, terrible silence to find out if the kid even knows what to do with a father who needs something. Because what if he doesn't? What if Robert hands him the rawest thing he owns, and the kid just sends back a, "Haha, yeah"? That silence would cost more than the layoff ever did. So his thumb backs off the call button, naturally. Build 2. The swallowed poison. The if. He taps the thumbs up emoji, closes the laptop on the projections, and goes right back to performing the unbothered, competent dad who has it all handled. The pro. Instant, clean, zero exposure. The image survives intact. The father who's still ahead of something, who doesn't need, who corrects gracefully and moves on. He gets to keep the mask, and the mask is warm, and the mask has never once made him wait in a silence. The con. He trades the actual son for the idea of being the kind of dad who doesn't need his son. He pays in installments, one swallowed conversation at a time, until the kid is 40 and they talk twice a year about nothing, and Robert finally understands he optimized his entire fatherhood down to a single thumbs up. Sunk cost. 20 years sunk into being needed, and rather than admit the investment matured into something he doesn't know how to hold, he writes it off. He files it under fine. He keeps the books clean and the heart empty. His thumb hovers over the keyboard. The typing bubble rises for the 5th time and dies. And this time he doesn't restart it, because he finally reads the number nobody put on a dashboard. He has nothing left to teach Michael. Not one thing. Not a shortcut, not a war story, not a single hard-won lesson the kid hasn't already lapped him on. The whole inventory, 20 years of it, obsolete. End of life. The guy you keep on payroll out of pity until the next round of cuts. And here's the part that drops the floor out completely. It was never the job that made him a father. It was being asked. The questions were the only thread that ever ran from his son's life back into his. And somewhere, at some dinner he was too busy to sit at, some recital he answered an email through, the questions just stopped. Nobody told him. Nobody filed a ticket. The thread went dead, and he kept holding his end of it in a hotel room 300 miles away, waiting for a ping that already stopped coming years ago. All he's got left now are things he wants to say, and he never built that muscle. He built the other guy, the one with the answers. And the one with the answers would rather sit alone in the dark and feel the floor give out than make one call that starts with empty hands. So he sends the thumbs up. Of course he does. One tap, blue, done. The cheapest, coldest acknowledgement in the entire human language. The digital equivalent of a nod across a parking lot. He sets the phone face down on the nightstand, and the unfinished reply he drafted 4 times dies in the dark, where nobody will ever read it. The HVAC kicks off. The room goes quiet. The ice machine hums down the hall like it's got somewhere to be. And somewhere 300 miles back, in a house with all the lights off, there's a woman lying on her side of a bed that's been one half empty for years. And she stopped pinging him long before the kids did. He never modeled that one. Never ran the ROI on the first ping he let go dead. Because that math has no win column at all. But here's the variable he can't close out. The phone is still right there, face down, but right there. And the door is unlocked. It was always unlocked. He could still pick it up. He could still make the call that starts with empty hands. The math is sitting in front of you now, the same way it's sitting in front of him. The phantom gain of being seen, against the brutal price of being seen needing. So, the phone is right there. The door is unlocked. Are you calling him? or are you sending the thumbs up?